All right, it's May the 16th, 2018, and I am Catherine Whelan Costen with Debbi Lang, and Debbi Lang is an expert in astrology and all kinds of metaphysical tools, tarot, and her own starseed blueprint with the 5-element theory. And today we decided to have a little chat about the Uranus beginning to transit Taurus and how that is affecting. We're hearing all kinds of things from people, how it's affecting energy and things going on in the planet, relationships, personal, the earth changes, and so forth. So thanks, Debbi, for joining me for this chat. This is exciting. It's an exciting time, as always, on the planet, but more so today.
Well, I think it's a good idea to look at it as if it's exciting, because for other people it's fraught. It could be, how we can tend to look at things in a way of anxiety and nervousness and expecting the worst. And of course, when Uranus goes into Taurus, that happens once every 80 years or so. Uranus has an 84-year orbit around the sun. And of course, you divide that up by the 12 different constellations or signs. And it means that it goes through each one approximately 7 to 8 years.
Wow.
So it's really big. It's like a lifetime.
It is.
It is a lifetime. So people who were born in the 30s, early 40s are having what they call a Uranus return in Taurus. And, when Uranus enters Taurus, they're very different energies. I don't think you could even say they're opposites, but Uranus rules Aquarius. And Aquarius is one of the fixed signs. Taurus is another fixed sign. Leo is another, and Scorpio is another. So when you have these fixed energies, that's called squared energy or opposing. In this case, Taurus and Uranus, because Uranus rules Aquarius, there's sort of a square of energy going on here, and it's not good. It's difficult.
I don't think you even needed to say that. Everybody's feeling that. It's not good.
It's really powerful. And as I talk through it, it's not a terrible thing, but it's powerful. All right. So what it does is it brings together some very unlike energies, which, creates ructions, creates repercussions and resonances. And we like things to be a little more easygoing here on Earth because, life is stressful and strained enough as it is.
Especially in the last 20 years. I mean, we've really been through some interesting times.
Well, we have speeded up interesting, but it's always interesting on Earth. We've had a century full of, this, that, and the other craziness. We've had world wars, and this century has been all about discovering ourselves as part of a global community. And that's been pretty shocking to the cultures as a whole. That's a really big leap in understanding. And that's what Uranus does. Uranus gives us leaps of understanding. And it doesn't really it's not always a gentle, it's very fast. It's like a lightning striking. And boy, you get it. And it doesn't coddle us, not at all.
But we have been being prepared. I mean, the changes we have, some people haven't really paid attention, but the fact is we have been being prepared since the harmonic convergence, since the changing of the vibration of the planet, the raising of the vibration. We've been doing, and a lot more people are, I think I heard, we're and some people are more awakened than others to the fact that there's something beyond what we've known as just physicality, that there is other influences like astrology and how these planets really do have some
But
kind of
there's also a
influence.
lot of resistance to change and seeing things, because this is a really big change in perception to, start, following something like, astrology or anything in the metaphysical world. That calls for a lot of flexibility and understanding. And most people are really busy with other things in their life, coping.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the change, not the because historically, yes, we've had other periods of time that were more conflict in different ways, although we have stuff going on right now. But what just occurred to me is, as you said that, is even in my lifetime, the number of people who are comfortable, let's say, talking about metaphysical understandings is a lot more than when I was a kid. I remember it being, there were people who talked about it, there were people who knew, but in
Right.
a lot of family,
Right.
culture, religion, you didn't talk about it. I mean, there were a lot of parts of this that were even considered, evil.
Yeah,
Or,
that's true.
you
Well,
didn't,
in Western culture,
yes,
in Western culture, large numbers of countries with huge populations like India, astrology is how you live your life.
yeah,
You would not get your daughter married to a man or your son married to a woman without a powerful astrological chart being put up. You just would not.
it's kind of
And
funny though, even when you say that, when you think about the Bible, when you think about Jesus, I mean, even his birth, they were looking at astrology, they were consulting this. So it is kind of funny that we had this.
it is funny,
Anyway, that's maybe getting
very
off track.
funny.
But I just
But
thought that,
really, stars guided almost everything. Half your life, half all the nights were lit by starlight. People planted by the seasons, by the planets, by the moon. People guided their ships by stars. People really interacted with these things. So of course it had a big part to play. It's only in our modern times where there's this intervening area where we are separated from the natural elements that are, all of our wisdom and everything is based on these things. But we're able to say, oh, well, that's out there. And until the next tornado comes along, earthquake or hurricane, to show us our actual real place with nature. And, when our electricity goes off, we're in worse shape than, the most so-called primitive people on the planet, because we can't really exist without our electricity very well.
True.
Anyways, this the power of Uranus is like a lifetime. And so in order to see what you would call a Uranus return, that is where Uranus returns back in the place on your chart where it was when you were born. And that takes basically 84 years.
Wow.
So other planets, not the same, but of course, like Neptune and Pluto, they're even further out. So it's more than a lifetime for those planets. So what we're seeing for you and I is probably the only time we see Uranus transiting Taurus in our lifetime. That'll be it for us.
Right.
This once. So we could be partying. But the thing about it that's so powerful is it's not just about that. There's some other things going on too that are really, really powerful.
Okay.
And they really support this. So now Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, which is, it's the age of Aquarius. We've been singing that song since the 60s, so we know this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. That means that this is a time that follows the energy that is represented also by Uranus. Uranus and Aquarius are alike. Their energies are similar. So Uranus is about eccentricity. Uranus as a planet has a very eccentric orbit. In fact, it almost orbits on its side. And scientists have speculated that perhaps there was a collision in the distant past that knocked Uranus on its side. Cosmic collision. So it has the most eccentric orbit in that way, in how it orbits the sun. It's kind of going, one way, and whereas most planets are rotating around its axis as it revolves around the sun. And Uranus is revolving almost at 98 degrees.
Oh, wow.
To most other planets' revolution. So its poles are sideways. So is it any wonder that it rules eccentricity? It has an eccentric orbit.
True.
It is also the sign of the rebel. And one of the websites that I was referring to in my studies made the point that even the naming of Uranus was a rebellious, it was, again, fraught. F-R-A-U-G-H-T, fraught.
Yeah.
And a man named William Herschel, he was the first man to discover a planet through telescope. The other planets up until then had been discovered through calculations, but made by the human eye, the naked eye.
Okay.
So that means up till Saturn. Saturn can actually be sort of seen in it as it traverses the sky. But Uranus also was this man named William Herschel discovered it. And so many people thought that it should be called Herschel.
Right.
And it's also the only planet that has retained the name of a Greek god and not a Roman god.
Huh.
So the other ones, like Jupiter and Venus, Pluto, those are all the names of the Roman counterparts of the Greek gods, where Uranus was the father figure of all the gods until Saturn overthrew him, way back when, before the beginning of history, we could say, in times of a mythological story.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can find on the internet these days. So
this is the rebel planet, so influencing. So when it's where it's at, this will bring up the rebel in us, or it's the rebel systems, or us.
You name it. It's all rebellion.
Oh.
It's against the status quo. Anything that interferes with our freedom of choice and our freedom of living and our freedom of thinking, our freedom of spirituality, anything that goes against our freedom. And of course, what's the thing that goes against our freedom most? Our fears, us creating rules and systems in order to cope and predict and control and
manipulate.
Well, that too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, to keep ourselves believing we're safe in a.
That's right. So don't step on a crack; you'll break your mother's back. That.
And then you're not stepping on a crack, and guess what? The earth opens up, and you got volcanoes and fissures and whatever. I mean, it's happening.
Yes, it is. So Uranus is all about busting open myths and forcing us to face the truth, face our fears. So yeah, we don't like it because it can be terrifying, but the aftermath is freedom and equality. So this is the energy that they quote about, like the French Revolution. That was a Uranian energy where, they said equality, fraternity, and liberty. That is the power of Uranus and Aquarius. It just does not put up with any limitations that are false or unfair. It just doesn't put up with that. It's about integrity and it's about truth. So the skeletons come dancing out of the cupboards.
We can see some big changes on the political front then
Well, and that comes along too, because there's also let me checking my notes here. There's what they call a stellium in Capricorn. That means there's 5 astrological bodies in Capricorn right now. So right now we have Saturn in this moment retrograde in Capricorn. Well, Saturn is Capricorn's planet. It's right at home. So that's a very powerful energy. So Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn as well. And Pluto is the planet that rules Scorpio. So it's very powerful in an inner sense, okay? So the thing about, there's a relationship between Taurus and Capricorn. It's a very powerful trine energy. That means they're the same element of Earth. So these are things that have a lot to do with Earth and about power structures on Earth. So it has to do with our money, the way we handle land and property, how food is distributed, shelter is with land and property. The way that we are so controlled by mortgages and, the whole price of real estate going up, up, up. It's so manipulated. It's also got everything to do with currencies, money, the metal, the things in the earth, the money that's traditionally linked to gold and other metals. Money is transforming itself. And the thing about this particular time on the planet is what we're not seeing. We're not going to be losing choices. So we're going to maintain all those other things, all those other old possibilities, and we're going to be handed umpteen new choices. We're going to have the Starbucks of choices for money, currencies, and possibilities. Probably by 2026, which is when Uranus moves out of Taurus and into Gemini, where it's much more at home.
So this is going to happen, this process, this is what's happening here is just beginning, is going to last till 2026?
Yeah, it's a 7-year process. 8 years, actually. 8-year process.
Holy jump in Jupiter. I mean...
Hop in Uranus.
Hop in Uranus. Oh my goodness.
So there's also a couple of big asteroids, and Ceres, I think, is the moon of Jupiter in Capricorn. All these things happening in Capricorn, this 5 planetary bodies Capricorn is represented by the goat, as is pointed out in these websites that I read. In particular, let me give some reference here so people can check this out themselves. I am looking at jessicaadams.com. Okay, she's written a lot. She started a year ago writing about this. It's so big.
Wow.
But what this represents is the fall of the elite. Capricorn represents the elite. It's it's the top of the mountain where the mountain goat climbs.
Okay.
So, this is that tiny percentage that rules everything, toppling. It's about skyscrapers and the high points, the small number that rule the big numbers. That is the ending, because as I seem to have said several times on my radio show yesterday or on Monday, I was saying that this is the time of Aquarius is about individual, ethical, personal, grassroots, community, integrity, and service. So this is where we start bringing our point of view together with everyone else so that everyone's voice gets to be represented more and more and more. And we actually have a representative governing, financial, educational, food distribution system worldwide. Now, this is not going to happen in 7 years,
but we're
it
on that
will
route.
happen.
But we're on that road. I mean, things can happen. They are speeding up as people are becoming aware of it, because there's just so many of us now saying this is enough. But I wanted to mention, since you brought it up, so that anybody listening to this on YouTube will know that they can tune into your radio show on community radio, CFBX, VX.
9.5 FM in Kamloops. Yeah.
Yeah. And they can get that on their phones, or
that's right.
Do it live.
Radio and various apps like that carry those community and other radio stations.
Yeah. And what time is that? That's BC time, British Columbia time. So on.
Yeah. Well, currently it's Mondays at 3 to 4 p.m.
Okay.
Subject to change, but yep, that's where it is now.
Well, if they go to CFBX website, vx.ca, they can get the schedule.
That's right, they can. Indeed.
It's just that you cover a lot of this stuff on that show, and some other interesting things as well. So I thought maybe it's the perfect time to let people know where they can find you.
So Taurus energy is usually maintaining the traditional. It's maintaining caution, slow moving, powerful, peaceful energy.
Okay.
And Uranus gives us change, as it is the overriding energy of Uranus. It's like, I'm not putting up with this anymore. The best for the most. The best for the biggest number.
So we could see a lot of people who've been sort of challenged in relationships and whatever, saying, okay, that's over. It's time for change.
Yes.
We see a lot of that.
Well, that kind of thing, yes, because it's also a very independent energy. Uranus teaches us to be very independent and to rely on ourselves, not solely, but to be responsible for ourselves and to work with the overriding energy of what's best for everyone. So it's about not putting our personal beliefs and prejudices ahead of the big picture. It is about the big picture working. And then within the big picture, each person finding their own personal space and respecting the space of everyone else. Whereas Taurus tends to be do your job first, and then worry about the big picture after that. And that's not a total picture, but it can be one of Taurus's strategies for life.
But sometimes people will notice these kinds of energies and that feeling that they've been in a job, say, which is another kind of relationship, and they've been feeling like, this is not where I want to be. It's not what I'm loving. I'm not enjoying coming here. I'm not. And so sometimes when these astrological energies, would you say, do they support us in making change, or do they kind of kick our butts and say, move it on? You've been saying you're going to.
If you're not paying attention,
mm-hmm.
If you're not paying attention to the signs and symbols and what's going on, you can get your butt kicked.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes
that's
people can look back on these things and then say, oh, like these cycles, they really, and this is 7 years. So I'm thinking, we're going to see some change.
That's right.
Okay, so you say
going to see a lot of and this is a speeded up time. That's what Aquarius does. Aquarius gets us moving. And if there's, doesn't accept excuses or even reasons. It's like, well, we're going, everybody's going, let's go.
Aquarius is water, right?
No, Aquarius is air.
Oh, it's air. Oh,
it's the holder of water.
Oh.
Yeah. The fixed water sign is Scorpio.
So would that be the reason for the last season, all the hurricanes and things like that, stirring it up before we were coming into this? Because there'd be a little bit of time lag as we're moving into a change like this, wouldn't there, or no?
Yeah, there is. I don't think that you could point out Uranus moving into transit as a strong culprit, but I'm sure it has a big effect on it. One of the things that's interesting is almost as soon as Uranus gets into Taurus, I mean in a relative kind of way, it goes retrograde. It goes retrograde on the 6th of August. And when it goes retrograde, it's retrograde in Taurus, but it hasn't gone into Taurus too far yet. And so it starts backing out of Taurus then. I mean, in relationship to how we are here on Earth. This is all perceptual and relative. And so by, the 5th of November, actually Uranus ends up back in Aries for a good bit. Pretty well until it goes direct on the 7th of January in 2019. It goes direct, and then in an equivalent length of time to get caught up again, to move forward back into Taurus.
So we see some rebellious stuff and then a lull, or what would that look like?
Well, Uranus carries rebellion with it. It's all the time.
Oh.
It wherever it goes. Within the parameters of the sign that it's in, it shows up in that sign's characteristics, okay? So the templates that run Taurus are money and property, all the aspects of what survival gives us. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac. Aries is the first, and it's the toddler. Toddlers start worrying about survival. At that young age, it's like, okay, I gotta behave here.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I gotta pay attention to where my survival comes from.
Right.
So all those aspects of survival become the templates that the energies of Uranus kick up a fuss of rebellion and eccentricity, uniqueness, individuality. Whereas, Taurus is about, well, let's just take our little time here. Let's not rush into anything. This is kind of a conflictive energy for these two different planet and sign.
So what's the best way for the human it seems funny to say that, but really, yeah, the human on planet Earth, what's the best way for us to adjust to these energies or to ride the wave? How can we embrace this without fear, without just knowing, okay, it's like knowing a storm's coming, batten down the hatches or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation or your...
Well, it's going to affect everybody differently. So what I would do is check out where Uranus is in your birth chart and see where, if there's any major hits. It's going to affect some people more than others. It's going to affect Aquarians and Taurians and, and people who have Uranus in Leo, things like that. Yeah.
And for people who don't know their birth chart and things like that, they could actually have a private session with you and go through that if they're feeling like, sure, hey, I'd like to understand this more. They could, and how would they contact you, Debbi? What's your best way for them if they want to do a private session?
Right, probably the best way is to get me my email address, dcandmx@gmail.com. At this point in time, that's the best way to get in touch with me.
All right.
Yeah.
I just thought that because there's so much information and there's so much change and it does affect us individually, yeah, as well as collectively.
So one of the things is to get caught up on your stuff. Do not have a backlog of chores, things that you've been putting off. Either do it or drop it off your list, one or the other. It's a good time to start reviewing your bucket list and have, an intention. Am I seriously going to do that? Because if you're not, you're going to get carried along that way because it's on your list. And another way is to really pay attention to what symbolically is going on. It's not a good time to tempt fate. If you're a person who quits smoking, stay quit, because if you go back to, if you pick up that cigarette again, Aquarius is not going to be happy. If you want to quit smoking, this is a great time to say, stop this, and be a little gentle about it, please. And it's a good time to pay attention when people start looking at you sideways, saying, wow, you're being stubborn. And you don't think you're being stubborn. You're just, sticking to your principles. If it's not working, why isn't it working? That's the question. If something in your life, you keep pushing at it, you got to stop and look at it and say, now there's a reason here. And don't push, because, you don't want to be having something, lightning strike you as you move into something that you're pushing your way through. It's a good time to wait for things to ripen, but it's also a good time to get going on what you've been resisting.
So letting go of procrastination and being aware of if you're pushing for something that may not be for you.
And also you got to be true to yourself. If you've been trying to live somebody else's life, if you've been doing what you thought you should do and it's not working, if it's not working and it's not working, it's not gonna work. And this is liberation. But you don't necessarily want to tempt liberation. This is really important. Watch your language, because lightning strikes when we get into judgment, when we are not telling the truth, when we are gossiping. Aquarius really has some very stringent values for interpersonal relationships. It really insists that we respect each other. It's all about that. It's all about self-respect and respecting others' choices. So, this is a time where if we're lying to ourselves about something or lying to somebody else about something, it's gonna come out. So if there's a big secret weighing on your soul, you need to go to confession. If it's something that needs to be said to somebody, then get some help and learn how to say it in a way that is going to be helpful and not hindering.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I noticed, that's one of the things I noticed with this energy, and I've noticed people on social media are, it's really coming out where people who are, they're not using what I would consider polite conversation.
Yes.
And it's not that they're, it's not like terribly vulgar or anything, but it's just the way that people are saying, they have an experience that troubles them, or that they feel someone treated them poorly, but then it's sort of this passive aggressive thing when then they just post this anonymous thing, and it's aggressive, and I look at it and I think,
but what happens is Aquarius and Uranus takes the high road and has an umbrella. All right, it goes for the best for everyone. So the big picture, the golden rule.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter so much what your motivation is, but follow the golden rule. Pay attention Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or have done unto
Well,
you.
I think, and it's more obvious these days because we do have so much social media. And a lot of times people, what they would not say in their private, personal, one-to-one, face-to-face conversation with strangers, with even with friends, they're doing it. It's become easier to do that. And what I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is because, what goes around comes around, and the golden rule concept, we didn't have social media 20 years ago like we do today. So we have to learn to transfer our public skills, our social skills that we used to use in real life, to our social media. We haven't done that in many ways. It's become a bit of a free-for-all. And I just think it's important for people to realize it is going to come back and bite you in the rear end.
Yes.
Because it's
that whole public personal line. Okay?
Right.
It's that whole place where we are not, our freedom is number one. Our freedoms are guaranteed with Aquarian energy, but not our selfish, are not our egotisms.
Right.
You're right to, you're right to your space ends 6 inches from the other person's nose. We have to take responsibility how our world, our lives, our sense of needs affects other people. That's very Uranian, very Aquarian. So while our personal freedoms are being guaranteed, also our personal responsibilities are being highlighted, our respectful interactions. Because while Uranus can be very brutal, abrupt, lightning striking, it also demands respect, and it wants peace. It will do anything that's needed to bring our freedom, because our freedom, and our freedom must be our peace. You can't really be free if you don't have peace.
Right.
So it's peace from our inner world and peace in our outer world. It really is going to direct our attention to where it all starts, which is our inner relationship with our creativity and our creator. What's really important? Who are we really? And then some very big questions come up. And from those questions, we then decide, or we then are taken down a path through our behaviors. Our behaviors so often are based on our choices. Our choices are based on our beliefs, and our beliefs are based on our values very often.
Right.
And so it all goes back to the very basics of what do we believe, what do we value. Our basic values, well, freedom is, that is something we're guaranteed. Freedom of choice, but also everybody else's freedom too. That's the thing, everybody's freedom. And if somebody has more freedom than somebody else on the planet, well, that person who has more freedom might be really asked to give up some freedom in order to balance what's going on for someone else. So while it is about freedom, it's about the freedom of the whole, freedom for everyone. Yeah.
Freedom and fairness, yeah.
Yeah. So all in all, what we're dealing with here is a lot of old structures toppling, which can be very frightening. And in Taurus, it often brings up in that very reactiveness and wanting to keep things in tradition, but then the Uranus coming along and demanding change, you get to see a fracture that is a dividing line of what used to be and what will be. So we can look for fractures. That could be in a physical sense, that can be in an emotional sense, but it's through the fracture. You know, it's when our heart breaks open that we're actually able to feel, to love. So we are going to be going through experiences that may break us open, and that can be frightening and that can be painful. But all in all, it's if we can understand that this is bringing us something better. You know, the fire sweeps through and new growth comes in its you know, behind it. That's really how it happens, and it's as swift as fire. When lightning strikes the earth, divine energy rebalances the energy differential between earth and sky.
Well, watching the volcano in Hawaii, and it was really interesting because it's creating a whole new land. You know, it's pouring out and creating more land, and that land is rich and fertile, and I mean that's why Hawaii is lush the way it is that that's a whole new,
and it's bringing all the minerals and nutrition out of the center of the earth, brand new, clean, to be you know, to be part of the nutrition, the nourishment of the planet. Symbol for everything that's going to happen in that whole range of energy between Aquarius and Earth. Earth being the planet that is that rules Taurus.
And what's inside our heart that we didn't know was there through that, you know, it feels.
And what's inside our mind, and what's inside our feelings, and what's inside our spiritual connection with life. You know, what's there that we didn't know. And renewal, that, you know, that example you say of the volcano is renewal. And, you know, the volcano is very much a symbol of Pluto's energy in Scorpio, but it's in Capricorn. So there's another, you know, it's retrograde right now in Capricorn, Pluto is. And so there is that renewal happening that way as well.
Wow.
Through the volcanic energy.
There's a lot going on. Okay. Well, so two things, if you want to keep following Debbi on her radio show, so you can, and I'll put the link right on the video here. And also, if you want private sessions, if you want to get more information, not just, it could be your astrology, your birth chart, your tarot reading, all those kinds of things. Debbi is an expert in all those areas and such good, delicious guidance and insights. So you can contact her.
Thank you.
For personal reading. And so we'll probably do another one of these again as these things shift and change. I can feel already, because there's just so much to talk about. There
is quite a bit of talk about it. It's big.
It's really big. All right, everybody, hold on to your hats and the seats of your pants, because this is going to be a fun ride. 7 years.
Yes.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.